arrests. Over the past 72 hours, pockets of LA descending into chaos. Protesters setting cars on fire, dumping bikes and scooters on police cruisers on the highway. Law enforcement firing hundreds of flashbangs and non-lethal projectiles and making dozens of arrests. It got so heated in the streets that a British...
Welcome, new Templars. I'm Dylan Lewis Monroe, aka A145, the Map Maker, and have we got the news this week? You know, sometimes recently I've said not much happened this week. This week, shit has hit the fan on so many fronts. Mainly with the riots starting to erupt nationwide, beginning in Los Angeles, over the ICE raids, which we'll talk about, and the deportations. It is looking like Summer of Love 2025 edition, redux of Summer of Love 2020 is getting started right now. Military vehicles are deploying across the country, and once we start the slideshow in this video, we're going to kick this off with some personal footage that I got just right down the road here in sleepy old little Cincinnati. So we're going to cover that, the LA riots, the ICE riots, and how that is now expanding to other liberal hellhole strongholds from Austin, Texas, to Atlanta, to Chicago, New York, I'm sure Seattle. And this is becoming George Floyd 2.0 without just the one George Floyd, but for all those immigrants. We're a city of immigrants, is what Karen Bass says about LA. And of course, conservatives are saying these are riots. The Democrats are saying these are peaceful protests. Once again, you know, calling these extremely violent protests peaceful protests. I mean, whether you want to call it a riot or not, you know, I had one person DM me on Instagram and say, oh, well, why don't you show the people on January 6th that were hurting the police officers? Well, I think this is a little bit of a different situation. But so after we get through the riot news, I'm going to talk a little bit about JD Vance in this video and some concerns that people are having about AI and JD Vance, and potentially JD Vance being a big tech sleeper Manchurian candidate for president. And I'll weigh in on whether I agree with that or not as well. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to mention the Trump-Elon Musk feud, which is now basically ancient history, even though all this happened since the last video I recorded last Wednesday, and both the videos I recorded last Wednesday. The Trump-Elon feud blew up on Thursday, then LA blew up on Friday, and it's been blowing up every night since. And so a lot going down. Could this be the plan, the mass arrests, the mass civil unrest, to call in the Insurrection Act, to call in the military, to call in the National Guard, what we've been talking about since 2017? Or will it be a kind of false alarm for all of that, kind of like it was in 2020, resulting in the big disappointment of the election of 2020? Well, we're in the second term now. Trump is seemingly much more powerful than he was before, more unhinged than he was before, and so I could see this potentially leading into some arrests of higher level political characters, not just illegal immigrants. So that will be the itinerary for tonight. And I want to kick this off with personal footage that I got just down the road here at the mall near my home, at Whole Foods, or in the Whole Foods parking lot at the mall. And see for yourself what I recorded from the window of my own car here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Looks like some pretty militaristic vehicles. They don't really use Humvees anymore, do they? I mean, I'm not sure what to call these things, but it's clearly not, you know, your average police vehicle or something you see in the Whole Foods parking lot. Let's play that one more time, just in case you didn't get a close enough look. Armored. I don't know what you call it, SWAT vehicles. I mean, it looks like the same vehicles I've seen coming through the streets in LA, bringing in potentially the National Guard. So is this National Guard property in the Whole Foods parking lot? Well, let's get a little more up close and see what it says in the window. Oop, jumping ahead of ourselves there. This was in the window of the cab of the truck hauling those or those military vehicles. And what does it say there? This vehicle is on official FBI business. Now, I will have you know that across the street from this mall and this Whole Foods is actually the FBI headquarters of Cincinnati. And so, why didn't they park in the FBI's parking lot? Maybe their parking lot wasn't big enough. I don't know. But it's pretty weird seeing this in the Whole Foods parking lot, I have to say. I was not expecting that. I'm not even really expecting, anti-ICE protests in Cincinnati. This is, it's a red state with 3 major blue cities in it in Ohio here. This is actually J.D. Vance's home state and home city. He has his personal home here in Cincinnati, a neighborhood called Hyde Park. But are they preparing for something? If they're preparing here, I would assume that they're preparing in a lot of other places. And maybe this is kind of being driven by the FBI, which is now under the control of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino under this Trump administration. Is the FBI assisting the National Guard here in vehicle transportation? I'm not sure, but all I can say is this was very out of the ordinary to see at Whole Foods. And what day did I take those photos? I think it was late last week, perhaps. Let me just look at my phone really quick here. It was on Saturday. So one day into the LA riots, on day 2 of the LA riots is when I was seeing this in Cincinnati. And so maybe it'd be worth a visit over to that FBI headquarters to see what they're storing up there. Maybe their parking lot's completely full of these things, and that's why they're spilling over to the parking lot across the street. I don't know. But it does seem like there is some kind of nationwide operation going on that is just as much anticipated and prepared for by, let's say, the White Hats or the Trump administration or, the federal agencies as it is anticipated and planned for by the leftist NGOs, Soros, Antifa, anti-ICE protesters. Is it all one side, perhaps? Is this all something like a charade? I don't know, but kick this off with, I'd say this is the most iconic photo so far from these LA protests. It's just like, this is not a good look for anyone involved, I would say. It's like, he's got the Mexican flag, he's got, all these like anarchist patches on his pants. I'm not sure what, that skull is very familiar, but I can't put my finger on it right now, but it's, like something like a death cult or like a cartel might have, sort of like a cartel insignia, waving the Mexican flag up there while they want to be American citizens. Just not a good look. And, another black man up there throwing gang signs. Well, I guess peace sign, whatever you want to call it. Destroying innocent Jaguar I-Pace Waymo self-driving cars. But this was really the iconic picture. And a lot of people, like in all different countries, are picking up on the irony of waving Mexican flags and burning American flags, writing graffiti that's anti-police, anti-America, writing death to America, all for the purpose of trying to stay in America. There seems to be some kind of a major logical disconnect happening here, which is what some of these articles that I'm going to read from RT are picking up on, like this one, saying Los Angeles migrant riots are the result of Biden's big mistake. And going on to say, flag-burning liberals find out once again that crime doesn't pay. The epic battle between illegal immigrants and law enforcement has proven beyond a doubt that the Biden administration committed a grave mistake when it opened up America's borders to a free-for-all. Perhaps if the anti-ICE protesters in Los Angeles had been seen waving American flags as they struggled against U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is what ICE stands for, patrols, they would have had a moral leg to stand on. Their major PR flaw was that they left Old Glory at home. Missing the irony, they chose to hoist the Mexican flag above smoldering LA landscape, showing support for the country they escaped from. There was even surreal incidences of American flags being burned. That's where things took a terrible turn for the Democrats as the Republicans seized the higher ground. And a quote from Vice President J.D. Vance, "Insurrectionists carrying foreign flags are attacking immigration enforcement officers, while one half of America's political leadership has decided that border enforcement is evil." So it's not making sense. It's terrible PR for Democrats. It's bad for everyone in the city. You know, riots like this, which I'll get to, that are destroying businesses, create just economic zones of desolation, can destroy businesses for decades to come after things like this happen. Even destroying some businesses owned by legal immigrants. So there is no logic, no rhyme or reason to the motives of these people actually doing the protests. But like for me personally, when I see this particular scene with the Waymo Jaguar I-Paces burning, all lined up like 4 in a row, all covered in graffiti, I'm like, what is really the point of this? To me, something about it really seems staged, and like it was all kind of to get a photo op like this. Just honestly turning, you have to think in terms of 5D chess. So, you know, the visceral reaction is, I guess for Democrats, the intended reaction is, oh, like sympathize with these people because, you know, they're immigrants being deported and being torn away from their families, and hardworking people that are just trying to work landscaping and restaurant jobs and manual labor jobs that Caucasian Americans don't want to do. Why are we deporting them? They're just such good people. Well, I mean, when you're covered with skulls and crossbones and, you know, this belt that looks like it would hold grenades, and, you know, having the skull face mask, is just skull gloves. Like, it's a very MS-13 look. And virtually no Americans want to import MS-13 gangs, you know, violent cartels into our country, because we all know that that does not lead to good things. And I keep going back to these Jaguar I-Paces because I just think it's such a beautiful car. And to have, you know, a display like this of destroying these beautiful autonomous cars is just shameful. You know, there's nothing good about it. And it's like, what did the Jaguar I-Pace do to you? Why did they even park them there? Like, why did they choose these cars to burn? Like, why aren't they, like, I mean, ICE vehicles or police cars or like any other type of car? It's like they chose to burn these autonomous cars, I guess, just to make a statement. I think this is staged in some kind of way. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like, why choose Waymo? Like, what did Waymo have to do with immigrants? But here, you know how I love these little maps that outlets like The Sun and different types of outlets make, even though they're not always accurate. But this has been going on for 5 days now. It began on Friday. Let me get my dates up here. Started on Friday, 6/6, which I found that a little interesting, like 6/6/6. Interesting date to start something like this. And are ongoing. And the latest news is that they have imposed a curfew starting tonight. Curfew imposed in Los Angeles following the riots. Restrictions will be in effect in a section of downtown from 8 p.m. till 6 a.m. And so it is hard to know, you know, just from looking at the news. And I was not following this too closely over the weekend. I did feel like I was getting too far behind and had to catch up starting Monday, Tuesday. But it's hard to know, like, is the whole city in chaos? Is it just a couple instances on a few different overpasses and a few little demonstration areas? It's really hard to say. I mean, obviously the whole city of LA, like, is not in total chaos, and that the media likes to over exaggerate things always, is what I can tell you from experience, especially my experience with January 6th. And, these are incidences throughout the city, but it's not like even as bad as the Paradise or the, nowhere near as bad as the Pacific Palisade fires that took place in January. So we see on this map 4 main areas of chaos, which were the Wiltshire Federal Building in Santa Monica, the Metropolitan Detention Center near Santa Monica or Hollywood, the 101 freeway where officers were trapped under a bridge by firework-wielding criminals, and in the town of Paramount, where protesters fight with ICE officers. For some reason, for me, from my conspiracy mind, like I kind of focused in on Paramount because that reminded me very much of Paramount Pictures and Paramount Studios, and just, is all of this some kind of a white hat production potentially? And, what's the connection between Paramount City and Paramount Studios, which apparently there isn't really one. This is the map of showing where the Paramount location is, just east of Compton. Not the best part of town, I would guess. And Paramount Studios is up further north in Hollywood. And Paramount Studios was named before, or I think named before, the Paramount neighborhood. And so there's no connection between the two, but this could be sort of like a white hat clue that maybe some of this is a staged production, which I think very likely might be, especially if the white hats at this stage, if, after everything we learned from 2020 and the George Floyd riots, financed by organizations like George Soros's Open Society Foundation and all the different NGOs and little activist groups that they filter their money down into, I believe that throughout those George Floyd riots, the white hats really mapped out all of the financial structures of this leftist riot machine, and now pretty much most likely controls them. And so when this kind of thing happens, it's for a reason. It's a 5D chess move to elicit a reaction in the public and rally public support around a certain issue. And these riots are not helping the issue of deportation in any way, although they are spreading to other Democrat cities. This could all be orchestrated. And so this is actually the latest article I've seen about the situation in LA, that restrictions will be in effect in a section, the curfew essentially. Curfew has been imposed. Mayor Karen Bass announced Tuesday police will arrest anyone violating the curfew, which is expected to remain in place over several days. Bass said the decision came after a tipping point was reached, noting that 23 businesses had been looted the previous night. The curfew covers roughly 1 square mile bordered by the 5 freeway and the 101 freeway and the 10 freeway, where it merges with the 10, blah, blah, blah. Residents of the area are exempt. So we have seen a lot of Democrats encouraging these violent riots and protests, which again is, think in terms of 5D chess. This is tarnishing the reputation of the Democrat Party. It's associating the Democrats with lawlessness and chaos and the destruction of cities and businesses that really I don't think any Americans are in support of. Although, many Democrat Americans are in support of not deporting these illegals, no one is in support of looting and riots. And as much as Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom want to say the word peaceful protests, anyone with 2 brain cells and functional eyes can see that this is not peaceful protests. And, these rioters are the main thing I'm seeing from the footage. And I just saw a lot of footage on Fox News just tonight on Jesse Waters' program. It seems like these rioters are using quite a bit of fireworks directed at these police, which is obviously very much illegal, very much not peaceful to shoot fireworks at police. None of that was done on January 6th. From my personal observing on January 6th, I saw a few different people with those like not use the word bomb, but smoke devices for dramatic effect. And of course, the police were using tear gas in some instances on January 6th, although I didn't get caught up in that. This is way worse. I mean, they've already resorted to looting, and this is not even, the looting has nothing even to do with anyone illegal immigrants. If you see who's doing the looting, it's the usual suspects, which is, of course, the African Americans of, probably Compton and other like neighborhoods like that. And it's the exact same thing we saw during 2020, when one of the most shocking things I had ever seen in my life on the news, when all the designer stores in Manhattan were looted by most likely people from Harlem and Queens and Brooklyn, and spreading the message somehow through some kind of social media channels that it's fair game for looting. And so far, what did she say in that article? Like 23 businesses have been looted. I would say that's probably an underestimate. I've heard already the Apple store looted, T-Mobile, Adidas I saw. And once again, like these are being looted by people that have nothing to do with deportations, illegal immigrants, or even trying to support them or not support them. These are just people taking advantage of chaos and someone putting out the signal to them, most likely, that activate them. Sometimes I feel like this certain demographic is kind of like a secret weapon of the Democrat Party, and they have established communication channels with them. And when they want to activate them to cause chaos, somehow the message gets out, it gets spread through the community, and these people aren't afraid of the repercussions. Like they just want to steal free Adidas and whatnot. Anyways, so Trump has said that these are paid insurrectionists. So that again says that in some way this is staged. This is not organic, like a lot of the websites organize these types of things like to insinuate that this is a grassroots protest, this is a grassroots thing. Like, no, this has the fingerprints of Soros and NGO all over it. And so Trump has said these are paid insurrectionists, but on a higher level than that, that's the 10,000 foot level. From the 40,000 foot level, is this some kind of a master plan by the white hats to get the National Guard deployed or the Marines deployed and start arresting higher level players other than just illegal immigrants and Democrats supporting, these anti-ICE protests? But talking about, I would say in this situation, Mayor Karen Bass is one of the primary targets here. And from listening to Juan O'Savin, there's even questions about whether she was legitimately elected through this electronic voting software. Juan O'Savin was saying that the Republicans did far, far better in even LA and California than has been reported in the supposed vote counts from these electronic voting machines. And I'm pretty certain that the white hats know which California politicians, most likely none of them, are in there legitimately or not. And so, once we have National Guard deployed under some sort of declaration of Insurrection Act, potentially Marines as well, and other branches of Army personnel, could we see some higher level arrests begin happening, either for defying this insurrection order or defying, federal orders to deport illegal immigrants, or, there's even stuff being brought up now, like more revelations coming out about 2020 election fraud. And I mean, the main one above all of that is the accusation and the crime of human trafficking, adrenochrome drinking, human sacrifice, that the public is not ready to hear yet. But so we have these people, these high-level Democrats like Newscomb and Karen Bass on literally 3 different major federal felony violations from, defying Insurrection Act, assisting illegals, election fraud, and adrenochrome consumption. And so like these people are fucked from 4 different directions. And of course, it all connects back to the Q post. Like people, I'm not going to pull up the Q posts. I'm past that phase in my career. But people are pulling up Q posts. You can look at Jordan Clark. I'm sure you can look at And We Know and X22. And like there's Q posts that connect to all these things. Somehow, Q knew like 5 years in advance specific details about these National Guard deployments, like the bases they're coming from in California and whatnot. The timing, I think I even said like last week, we said like there was a Q post that said this was going to be a big week for booms. And I reported that in the beginning of the week. And, lo and behold, there was a minor boom previous week and then boom, boom, boom the rest of the week. Trump-Elon feud, LA breaks into complete chaos. And so like the Q posts are right on target. And all the pieces are falling into place for what we have talked about since 2017, this idea of mass arrests. Just some other little photos from LA. I would not go to LA this week. I would love to be there to be reporting on what's going on and really see firsthand what's going on. You'd probably just be sitting mainly in traffic jams quite a bit, or violating curfew orders, or getting shot with rubber bullets. Who knows? But it's hard to know exactly like the vibe and how expansive and extensive these riots are without being there. But from what we've seen, it's obviously noteworthy. But then, of course, you have your typical LA exhibitionists and, liberal psychos that just want to take advantage of this to block traffic and stand around naked with signs with Illuminati symbols saying, "I am God and let's do ayahuasca." So it's like classic LA retard. I mean, most of these people in LA that, involved in Hollywood and the music and movie industries, like they're not too concerned with politics generally. Like they know TDS and they know Orange Man Bad, but they don't really know too many details beyond that. And so they're pretty, the reputation of just being vapid and self-obsessed narcissists holds true even in the midst of riots. So this was a tweet from June 8th, a couple days ago, where people were getting everyone in LA receiving emergency notifications via their phones, SMS, or not even SMS, but emergency alerts. LAPD, protest activity, DTLA, downtown LA at 101 freeway, Almadía. Unlawful assembly declared, use caution. That sounds like it may be the epic footage we saw of people throwing rocks over an overpass onto police cars below, smashing their windshields, potentially really hurting, doing mortal harm to some of these police officers if, rocks and stuff are falling through their windshields. Like, never good to assault police officers in ways that could cause death or severe injury. And so, like I was saying before, this was the meme that I shared on Instagram comparing the January 6th insurrection to what Democrats are calling the mostly peaceful LA anti-ICE protests or riots. Whether you want to call it one or the other depends if you're probably Democrat or Republican. And, of course, we could have shown the scenes when these most likely federal agents were first breaching the Capitol, which I don't think was ever compared. Like, there was no fire, there was no fireworks. There was a few cans of tear gas expelled by, the Capitol Police, not by the insurrectionists on January 6th. There's no comparing. I mean, insurrection of January 6th was a Fed boy operation, followed by a peaceful protest or a peaceful mob of people that were allowed into the building. And these LA protests are a complete different animal, if you ask me. But of course, Drudge Report is doing its typical thing. I'm so disappointed in Drudge Report that the TDS is still so bad, even in Trump term 2. I mean, Drudge Report has had as a news agency, like as bad TDS as MSNBC and CNN ever since before Trump's first presidency. And so, like, they're making this seem like total Armageddon and total humiliation for Trump, even trying to prop up Gavin Newsom as some kind of a hero. Of Newsom takes on the king to fight for his life and fight for these Los Angeles who are a city of immigrants, more like a city of Jews. And Trump's deploying the military to LA threatens arrest of governor, mayor. That might be a little preview of what is to come. DOD readies Marines. We are going to have troops everywhere, says Trump. And I also follow me on X, where I'm really posting everything I'm seeing about these events unfolding nationwide. But one of the videos I posted on X was a video from a street in LA where there was like flyers all over the street with instructions for these insurrectionists or protesters about how to mask their identity, what to do, what to say, and like who is making these flyers. And there was another video of, a big black van handing out what looked to be, very expensive gas masks from the box that they had ordered in bulk. And so it's like, who is really funding this? It seems very much like what we would call back in the day George Soros, and what is now Alex Soros, and many, many other Democrat NGOs, which I will actually be showing a list of some of those in a minute here. Before we get to the expanded riots here, the nationwide, take our little focus from LA to nationwide. I'm going to throw in a few little promos. The main one being for Deep State Mapping Project, DSMP.io. If you want to support the operation, if you want to help the Great Awakening, if you want to have amazing tools to understand the master conspiracy on planet Earth and all its different subsections, from geopolitics to energy to health and healing to finance, go to DSMP.io and first subscribe to our newsletter. Now, I want to also kick off the promos this week with talking about a couple upcoming events. The first one being, let's get that video out of there. This one called Stay Awake America Tour. And that's going to be in Venice, Florida, June 21st to 22nd. Now, I'm not actually going to be at that event myself. However, I'm pretty good friends with one of the women that's organizing it. And I still believe General Flynn is a pretty critical person in this whole movement. I mean, the leader of the digital army, Dom Lucra, big Twitter X personality, posting truth, keeping people informed about everything going on. And I'm not crazy about this flyer, but there's like 20 other speakers that's going to be there, including Judy Mikovits. I'm kind of struggling to see the list there, but it's going to be a great event. It's a local musicians, nationally known expert speakers in health, civics, education, and on human and child sex trafficking. So not always like what everyone wants to hear about necessarily, but very important to understand and so central to the Q operation. So that is June 21st to 22nd in Venice, Florida, and go to stayawakeamerica.com if you are considering to check that out, if you're in Florida or if you can travel to Florida easily. And the next one I actually am going to be a part of and speaking at, which I'll be continuing to mention until October, but the Super Soldier Activation Conference held by James Rink and a lot of these other super soldier type personalities and whistleblowers will be in Orlando, Florida, October 8th through 12th. And so I'll be doing a booth at that, as well as speaking, doing probably like a solo speech. And if it's anything like his last conference, doing a few different panel speeches as well. So really looking forward to that. I know that's a little bit of a ways off, but I think the earlier I start promoting it, probably the better. And so for that, you go to supersoldiercon.com and you can get your tickets for the Super Soldier Activation Conference. So those are the upcoming events. And just to quickly go through some of the things we have on deepstatemappingproject.com. Obviously the Q key, which you see behind me there, the new version with a couple new colors and several new bullet points. We sell all of our artworks as laminations, prints, some as mini posters, large posters, and some as tapestries as well. We have the Octagon group map, the Swiss Mafia, and all their affiliated Illuminati organizations. The Healing Web, one of our most popular artworks, comparison between big pharma and holistic health. Once again, posters, mini posters. The Infinite Life Vortex is Healing Web 2.0. This is the folding mini poster that is the cheapest version we sell, although it does come with the creases. If you don't want the creases, you can get the full uncreased poster or the 40-inch extra large lithograph. This is Healing Web 2.0 with all the information from the Healing Web and more about holistic health and a little bit less about the big pharma remedies that you really don't need. The World Hierarchy Pyramid, one of my favorites. People are always mapping out the world hierarchy, but this is the ultimate version, considering both the world we see, the secret societies, the priesthoods and the bloodlines, the extraterrestrials and extradimensionals, and the angelic realms, all the way to the top of Source Creator from the Christian perspective. The Energy Map, this is the fold-out version, which we also sell as a 24 by 36 poster and a 40-inch. All types of energies and energy technologies from the dawn of the universe to the future civilizations that have yet to be announced. The Jasara map is the map of the financial system, talking about cryptocurrencies and Basel III, Bretton Woods 3.0, and the eventual switch to a gold-backed currency after the collapse of our current US dollar and euro. And lastly here, not the last map we have, but the last one I'm holding is, of course, the Maestro Map, the complete illustration of the 8-year Maestro plan from term 1 to the pause of the Biden show and term 2 into the future of the new golden age that I began talking about with the Jasara map and then became one of Trump's main talking points in the 2024 campaign. And lastly, the most succinct version of the QWeb to date, the DWeb, which is the same information from the Q key, which you see behind me here, but the DWeb is the most simplified variant. And of course, we have the shiny DWeb stickers as well. As a poster, this flyer comes free with anything you order from Deep State Mapping Project. It's our basic information flyer with a full diagram on it. So you get that little bonus with whatever you order. So that is all the artworks. And beyond the artworks, we have t-shirts and other objects, mugs based on the artworks. We have packets with all of those prints, almost all of those prints coming in a single packet for a bargain price. We have our whole crystal section. We have neons like you see behind me, Ashtar, Q, Jasara, and more coming soon. We have big crystals like this as well that come with light stands like this as well. So check out all the different sections on Deep State Mapping Project. They all go towards supporting the new Templars and the cause of spreading the truth and helping you to be a better truther as well. When you have these tools to share with others, you can better explain to people that this is not just a conspiracy theory, that a lot of what we talk about is really backed up by solid facts and solid historical data that has been censored from our media and therefore from our history books, which are all published by another certain demographic of people with a 3-letter name. So let's move on to what these LA riots are rapidly evolving into, which is a nationwide Summer of Love 2025. And by the way, we still have plenty of our tie-dye Q-Web Summer of Love 2020 t-shirts, which some of them were actually printed post 2020, but I like the design so much that we kept it going. I love the Q-Web Summer of Love tie-dye t-shirt, and that would be a perfect thing to wear for Summer of 2025 love. So here is a map that's being shared of, where many of these other anti-ICE protests are breaking out. Unsurprisingly, it's like the main Democrat stronghold cities from LA, Las Vegas, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Denver, Colorado, Minneapolis, MD, home of the George Floyd protests, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Philadelphia, New York City, Boston, and Miami, Florida are all mentioned on this map. Now, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Could those be the 14 cities that will descend into chaos? And, Juan O'Savin has been speaking extensively about this time period and this climactic finale for several years now. He is still reiterating this number: 14 cities will either fall or descend into somewhat of total chaos. And it may begin in many more cities than that, but will be quelled in the cities that are somewhat more under control of, the white hats and the good guy militaries. Whereas there are these 14 deep state strongholds where we are expecting civil order to disintegrate. And I'm not sure exactly how bad that will get. If the grocery stores will run dry, if there will be power cuts, we don't know. But best to not be in any of these big cities if you don't want to be involved with something like that. If you would like to maintain electricity and transportation and not blockaded highways and food in the grocery store, it's just we've been saying for years that you might want to avoid these Democrat run hellhole strongholds. Now, we are coming up on what could be a very intense weekend, all focused around the date of June 14th. And there is a little website called www.nokings.org. Let's see if I can't pull it up here to show you what I'm talking about. So I know there has been already at least 2, if not 3, nationwide protests this year, since Trump has come into office, that have kind of caught me off guard. And, it seemed kind of like a big effort. Of course, they advertise themselves as grassroots, but when you look into it, it is absolutely anything but grassroots. And so this is the website for this big protest coming up this weekend on June 14th, which corresponds with both Trump's birthday and the planned military parade in Washington, D.C. So June 14th is when it is going to pop off. And some people are saying that Trump is timing this military parade. Well, just maybe the White Hats planned the military parade, not just as a military parade, but as an actual deployment of National Guard and active duty military personnel to execute either ICE arrests or to quell insurrection or to do the big arrests that we have been talking about, like the high level, high player arrests, some of which may have already happened, but maybe sweeping through the mid-level players, sweeping through the 500,000 or more sealed indictments that have accumulated on the law books since, I would say, EO 13818, which was the one about blocking the property of persons involved in human rights abuse. So this is nokings.org. This is how the Democrats and the NGOs are going to organize this big set of protests on this coming Saturday. but I just got to show this first, is that under, I think it's if you click the 50501, which is meant 50 cities and 50 states on one day, was how this protest kind of got started. One of these protests happened, I think, the day after the inauguration or the day before. And of course, it says on here, 50501 is a grassroots movement, and all local events are organized by independent volunteers. That's probably the most bullshit I have ever read, because as soon as you go to their website and go to partners, actually, that what I just read was from under partners, that 50501 events. That's what I clicked to get to that. But I just want to show you guys, when you click on partners of these grassroots, independent volunteers, and scroll down, who do you think we find? I'm not going to read all of these, but a few of them stand out. Bend the Arc, Jewish Action, ACLU. I'm only going to read the ones that I necessarily know about, but Bernie, Bulletproof Pride, Catholics, Vote for Common Good, Blue Wave America, all this stuff for like environment, Green New Deal bullshit, Courage 2025. I mean, these people have more NGOs than you can even count. Feminist Majority, FFRF Action Fund. I have no idea what even most of these are. Greenpeace, I've heard of that. Basically all UN aid, money laundering, riot inducing, National Treasury Employees Union. Like, what the hell? I'm surprised it's not sponsored by the Federal Reserve and like Rothschild Bank. You might as well just say what it is. Planned Parenthood. I'm sure you've heard of that one. So as you can see, this is anything other than a grassroots independent effort. And there's massive funding behind it, massive amount of NGOs. And, I honestly don't expect this June 14th anti-Trump protest put on by nokings.org to be much of anything. I think it might be a flop, but you never know. And I mean, whatever these anti-ICE protests were, I'm not even sure if that had a website. It's, they claim it came up spontaneously, like it wasn't like a planned event. It just corresponded with people retaliating against ICE rounding up too many illegal immigrants. Supposedly, but I'm sure it was organized in some way. It's just maybe not a website devoted to explaining how it was organized. And so let's all keep our heads on a swivel on June 14th and see how much it pops off. See if the military takes this as an opportunity to do the thing we have wanted them to do since 2017, which is get a little more aggressive with these Democrat Illuminati. Maybe they can rough up a few of these activist judges that are trying to prevent the will of the American people when they voted in Trump specifically on campaigning for months and months on getting rid of these illegal immigrants and trying to prevent him from doing that when this is what the American people have explicitly voted for. On top of everything that's expected to happen on June 14th, Saturday, Jason Q has predicted, and like this is his logic, his numerology, and his prediction, but he has been saying, if you've been watching our Cranker Pit videos, that on June 13th, he's expecting to see some fireworks, we'll call it, in Israel. So that is Jason Q's prediction. I think it would be certainly very interesting, very entertaining if we saw something go down in Israel, corresponding or to at the same time as, all this unrest in America. When it rains, it pours. And for a long time, we have been saying that this Q operation will be drip, 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 trickle, trickle, and then flood. And I think we may be rapidly approaching the flood, although 107 has also said many times that these ICE operations and just in general, the arrest operations may take up to a decade to really fully run their course. That I do think we are reaching a short-term crescendo that should be fairly dramatic. And obviously, there's also a lot of tension in the Middle East and in Ukraine and Russia. that is also working towards their own crescendos that may all I mean, if it all happens at the same time, I'm going to have a hard time making a video about all of it, from Ukraine to Israel to the Americas. It's going to pop off soon here, I think, this summer, and we're gonna be here covering it all on New Templars. So, moving on now to, I'll call this maybe questioning JD Vance. And now I'm not a turncoat on JD Vance. JD Vance is my boy from Ohio. Not that I know him personally, but I was there at the rally in Dayton when Trump first endorsed him. I haven't done too much research on him personally, though, myself. I haven't read his book. And apparently there's, a lot of research to do on his career path that's not even in his book, because he kind of went from being a Marine to going to Yale to having all these billionaire big tech people funding him, financing him, getting him involved in various business ventures. And so people are now looking at JD Vance and his connections and wondering if he may be somewhat of a big tech mole in this administration, or possibly a big tech Manchurian candidate that was created and molded to actually be a presidential candidate, very much like Barack Obama was. But maybe Trump got in the way, and maybe certain people have pushed Trump to make him the vice president, unbeknowingly that this same cabal behind the scenes may try to do a little coup d'etat and get Trump out of the #1 spot and get JD Vance in, and then they will have free reign for the big technocracy and AI to be unquestioned, and roll out the AI New World Order, which is what a lot of people are concerned about and fearing. But I believe some of these fears may be a little bit overblown. And even though Trump's first vice presidential candidate or pick, Mike Pence, turned out to be pretty much of a dirtbag, I'm still getting a much better vibe from JD Vance overall, despite his connections to, Peter Thiel and Palantir and others. And, I don't want to know if I necessarily want to read through this entire meme, but essentially, there has been people financing him and sort of grooming him to potentially be big tech's little bitch boy. But I don't want to discount JD Vance completely. I'm not saying that's what I believe, but I'll bring up a few other things here. Nick Fuentes has been kind of pushing this, and Nick Fuentes, funnily, in this video, which I found very interesting, the title of the video is about the implications of the Elon Musk crash out, which is the fight between Trump and Elon. But there was quite a bit in this video about JD Vance, essentially explaining, much of this infographic is what Nick Fuentes did in this video. And so I would recommend watching this video. It's on Rumble, and see what you think. I actually got a text from Deep Time, who was sharing a lot of the same sentiments as Nick Fuentes. Deep Time's been a little bit black-pilled, I gotta say, since he left the New Templars. I try to remain a little more optimistic about things. But this is another tweet from Nick Fuentes talking about Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel sponsored JD Vance's business and political career. Palantir is a CIA cutout. Tucker pushed Trump to nominate Vance, and then Vance hired Tucker's son. Tucker's dad ran U.S. propaganda for the CIA. All these people glow in the dark. So I have to say, I was fairly impressed with Nick's level of research into Vance. It's definitely more extensive research than I have done. But sometimes I like to rely more on my gut and my intuition than actual technical research. And I think JD Vance is a case of that. But would I let him babysit my children? Probably. He seems like a cuddly guy. But it is slightly concerning. However, I believe Peter Thiel and Palantir have actually been Trump supporters and donors from the beginning. So it's not like, well, this actually says, to read a little bit of this, It's accusing Vance of being a lifelong liberal and a former never Trumper. Well, you know what? Trump was kind of a lifelong liberal too. So I give people the room to change. I give people that authority to change their beliefs, and we'll see what happens with JD Vance. But I don't think he's taking Trump's place anytime too soon. But some people were saying, well, Nick was saying that it was concerning that when Trump and Elon had their big fight online, which I am still getting to, by the way, I'm not going to cover that in too much detail because it's kind of like old news by now. But when Trump and Elon had their fight, Elon suggested Trump be impeached, which I'm not sure if he mentioned JD Vance specifically, but he suggested either directly or roundabout, JD Vance should replace Trump. And so that's what got people fired up on this little research train of looking into Vance's big tech connections and saying, is this all like big tech's master plan to get rid of Trump and put in the candidate that they have groomed to be, their pro big tech candidate in the White House. A couple other little random stories here before we get to the Trump-Elon feud. This is totally random, but just things I saved that I want to mention in the video. And I haven't even really seen a news from this. I just screen capped it off Instagram. But Trump lifts the supersonic flight ban over the US. I see this as potentially paving the way for new modes of transportation. We've been stuck on these horrible, claustrophobic, seats getting smaller and smaller, leg space getting smaller and smaller every iteration, old 1950s style airplanes for 70 years now. And I'm more than looking forward to seeing some new types of innovation in aviation. First and foremost being supersonic flights international, but supersonic flights from LA to New York would be nice. Traverse the country in just a few hours instead of like 5 or 7. And maybe that's even paving the way for other types of propulsion to be introduced in the future. So I'm going to do a little more research on that and keep my eye on that going forward. A little bit of other local news here in Cincinnati pertaining to a very important national organization, which is Procter & Gamble. This kind of goes in line with my economic crash news. We talked about bond yields spiking in previous videos. And, we've kind of been mentioning things about big companies either going bankrupt or doing layoffs in several different videos this year in 2025. A lot of people are suggesting that Trump's little tariff war might take us into a recession, which I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping for the golden age. But I got a report on it, and we have anticipated it from the early days of Jassara that the crash comes before the golden age, and it's not looking good for a lot of these big companies. With Procter & Gamble now announcing up to 7,000 jobs to be cut over the next 2 years. So it is not looking too good for the U.S. economy, despite all the rosy talk Trump does about the tariffs. I mean, maybe it will take 2 years of a crash. That's not as bad as 10 years of a depression. And it could just be like these executives are just maybe planning to implement AI more is another possibility here. Seeing that they have so many of these jobs that can be replaced by AI now could have something to do with these cuts. But a lot of it is supposedly based on uncertainty around the tariffs. And so always good to have a side hustle. I mean, this is going to be tough times if all of these big companies are cutting so many jobs. We talked about, I think, Microsoft cutting jobs like a couple weeks ago. It's across the board. All different big companies cutting jobs, closing locations. It's not looking like the golden age yet, I gotta say. But I do think the Maestro has a master plan. And at the end of the day, a lot of these companies, especially Procter & Gamble, are very cabal, doing a lot of amoral research, putting out really toxic products. And I mean, just with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. cleaning up the FDA's regulations alone could put a lot of these companies well, I won't say out of business, but could cause a lot of these companies like Procter and Gamble to have to do some major restructuring of their product lines because Procter and Gamble is a big one that is most likely guilty of, I mean, to be honest, causing cancer in millions of people through all the chemicals they put in their various products and, household items. So finally, this Elon Trump feud, I'm not even really sure what to say about it at this point. It was in a way a little bit embarrassing for the administration. Sad to see our two daddies fighting, is what a lot of people are saying. But, essentially the story goes, this is a little timeline we have here. The story goes that it was, I believe, over the last weekend, Trump gave Elon the key. They had the ceremony where Elon showed up with a black eye, which was very strange, and we still don't really have a plausible explanation for it. This is how angry Trump was about these tweets. Some have said that Elon got in a fight with Scott Bessent, I think, the Treasury Secretary. They got in a physical altercation at the White House. That's a rumor. I've also heard that as Musk left his position at Doge, he took Stephen Miller's wife with him, not as necessarily a romantic partner, but as a business partner. And so potentially like Stephen Miller might have given him a little in the face. Who knows? It was either Stephen Miller or Scott Bessent. And his official story was that it was little X just like roughhousing with him, which I think that's probably the least plausible explanation. Trump even said that Elon was offered makeup but denied it. So he wanted the press to see his black eye. Of course, conspiracy theorists are saying he's in the black eye club. They've put the reptilian probe into his eye. And now he's controlled by the reptilian overlord and the red spider AI. I don't know if I would entertain that one, but it certainly has people talking and coming up with all different types of theories, but I can't say necessarily which of these theories is true. But so actually, if you watch that Nick Fuentes video that I pulled up earlier, that goes into a lot of other details about this. And the simple fact that Elon was tasked with reducing the national deficit, which is 33 trillion, or the national debt rather, with these Doge cuts, which, were met with massive Democrat resistance and resistance by activist judges. But as Elon was trying to save America money, Trump and the Republicans are trying to push through this big, beautiful bill, which essentially says, fuck off to debt and just doesn't give a shit and is overspending once again, as our government likes to do, lumping in everything in one bill and essentially driving the country faster and faster towards bankruptcy, which may be part of the White Hat's plan to implement JSARA. But it seemed like Elon Musk was trying to kind of get the government to be a little more responsible with their spending. And someone was saying, I forget who it was, but that governments have navigated through bankruptcies before. And so it could be Trump and the White Hat's plan to just roll with this bankruptcy and essentially manage it, as opposed to, slowly reduce the national debt and get our budget back in order, that it might be easier to just let the whole thing fall apart and restart with a new currency. But, there seems to be some disagreement on the surface between Elon and Trump over this, but I think it's most likely all theater. And, a lot of people have said that this is not even the original Elon Musk. This is like a White Hat stand-in Elon Musk that is essentially just doing the White Hat's bidding. Oh, well, this timeline goes all the way back to when he first joined the campaign. I haven't even really looked at this in detail yet. I loved the moment when Trump and Musk held the Tesla event at the White House. But yeah, it was June 5th when Elon dropped the bomb that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and that's the real reason they haven't been released. Boom. And of course, this had the 5D chess effect of causing liberals and Democrats to start demanding that the Epstein files be released. And so I do believe that this little tiff between them was most likely staged, and Musk and Trump feud explodes with dueling posts on X and Truth. And we'll end the slideshow with a beautiful Templar Pepe holding an American flag. So it has been a whirlwind week. Definitely that Q post talking about this is going to be boom week from 2 weeks ago, or maybe that was last week when the booms were really hitting. Very much prophetic, I would say, as Q usually is. I'm not the one. I'm not going to show you all these Q posts. Go follow Jordan Clark on Instagram and X22 and we know, but I'm still on the Q train, and these posts prophetic, all this planned years in advance by quantum computers, time lensing, time travel even. And I'm very hopeful that these new round of Summer of Love will result in some mass arrests, some major sealed indictments coming unsealed. Of course, I'm keeping my ear on 107, who always get people in the comments saying, "Oh, you don't listen to 107. He's full of bullshit." I mean, I believe that he is the herald of Q+, which is Donald J. Trump, and that he is essentially one of the highest levels of continuous disclosure coming through in this truth movement, especially in the absence of QAnon itself or himself, whatever you want to consider what those posts were, who they were by. That stream of intel has dried up big time. And, so we're looking for people, in Trump's inner circle, Dan Scavino, Stephen Miller, to drop us hints. And 107 is the only one who acknowledges the Q operations and gives us a little more of an inside take without, revealing the whole plan to the enemy of what's actually going on behind the scenes. So I hear what he has to say. Of course, I don't believe everything he says. Run it through my own intuition and filters, but just keeping my ears out, all my ears out for the intel, when it's going to go down. Do your own observation as well. If you see these military vehicles popping up in your city, send them to me, post them on X, tag it up, and we'll get the word out. And hopefully, the idea is not to necessarily predict the future, but to be able to understand events in real time as they happen from an informed point of view, and not react emotionally, not react viscerally, and certainly not panic in a time of crisis. We're here as the digital army, the army of frogs, the 144,000, to hold the peace, to hold the vibration, and to weather the storm, and to hold the hand of everyone who probably will inevitably have a panic attack during the stormy times that are rapidly approaching. So we'll be back with the Cranker Pit tomorrow night, and see what else happens this week. We'll see what the big day, June 14th, holds. And hey, if there's a No Kings protest in your city, you may just want to check that out, not necessarily to get involved with it, but just to be the eyes and the ears on the ground, and report back if it's a pathetic failure, or if you see agents, or if you see deep state activity. Should be an interesting day, and certainly it will be interesting. A military parade in Washington, D.C., the Swamp Pit. I had a fantasy of them marching all the Democrats and rhinos from Congress into that parade. And well, I won't say how that fantasy ended. It wasn't pretty. So lots happening. We're on the edge of some major operations going public, I would say, and disclosure. And it's all coming together. So that's it for this one. Once again, head over to deepstatemappingproject.com, which is now dsmp.io. Buy some posters, buy some crystals, support the operation, sign up for the newsletter, come to the 2 events that I mentioned. It's always good to meet other truthers in person, to share ideas, connect, resonate, empower each other, make business plans together. And that's it for this one. We'll see you guys on the next video. New Templars.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to the future of finance. Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
Now before the storm.
What storm is it, President?
You'll find out. You'll find out.
Just now we saw a black triangular craft fly just right through